I'm always fearful that I'll forget to start recording. So I
Oh,
started recording a couple minutes ago. So it's just me like sitting like this.
that'll be good footage. Yeah,
That's why we only do audio.
put that on the security camera in the loop, and then you can wander around.
Just this is how the elders track me.
That,
Is he at his desk? Yep. Yep.
yeah,
Welcome to And Also, a podcast for the rest of the week, where Kirk Steigler and myself, John Eager, take just a few minutes to take a deeper dive into the previous week's message. We want to take time to talk about some of the themes that are found in the scripture, some of the ideas that are found in the series, and even some thoughts that were presented in the previous week's message to discuss how those ideas make a difference and an impact in our everyday life. We believe the scripture has greater application than just a Sunday morning, and in fact can impact all parts of our lives. And so this podcast is really aimed to discuss what it means for us to live those ideas, thoughts, and scriptures out.
Well, actually, going back to this past week, you said a line that poked me in the eye, which I thought was kind of funny. That said anyone can fit into humility, or something along that line, like humility is a one-size-fits-all, or will fit anyone, something along that line.
Humility always fits. Yeah, that
humility always fits, which made me really think about that, because then I thought humility is tough to pull over a giant inflated ego, right? So if you have a giant ego, humility doesn't fit on so well. However, if you look at it in the reverse, if humility was always there, right, that's the version of you that's underneath all that giant ego, right? The inflation of yourself, right? To I am great, that kind of nonsense. Like, I have control over these things, which I have control over these things. These things should be going this way. These people should be doing these things. All of that, I am awesome kind of sensation. That is inflationary and has no foundation ever, right? Never. So humility is underneath all that. When that bubble bursts.
I like how you said when, not if.
Yeah, because it does, right? And you're back to facing yourself again. You're like, oh, oh yeah, these things happened out of grace, not because I had control over anything. So that one sentence really hit me. I was like, oh, I guess you could say that, yeah. Will it fit again? Yes. It's kind of like those pants in your closet where you go, I am going to fit these again. I am definitely going to fit into these again, no matter what. That's humility. that becomes a humiliating moment, right? But humiliating doesn't have to be disheartening, right? It is a reminder of a return to a point, right?
So what? Yeah, that's really good. Talk about that.
Well,
the return, that humility is really a return.
So, you, as an infant, you have no such grandiose ideas, right? You're fed an idea, or you feed an idea, either way, of who you are or what you can become, or what a thing should be on your behalf because you will it, right? But the idea that like going back to the pants in your closet that you swear you're going to fit again, right? Maybe, life takes turns. We all grow in different ways. It's a goal to get back to. Can't always get there. Or maybe that there's something inside of you, right, that, or something you've put on yourself over time that you can ditch you can leave behind. It's been slowing you down. It's not helping you. You leave it behind and you're back to the core you that fits that thing again. So to return to humility, where you started out, right? That place of being the new kid in school, right? That's a moment of humility. The mind of a beginner at anything, right? That there's a million possibilities. You don't know what's going to happen, and you're open to see anything. Versus the expert who knows all, right? Only these things could possibly happen from this, situation. That's a moment of humility. That openness to all things is another way to look at it too, right?
Yeah. So what? So like it sounds like humility can be pretty uncomfortable. Then, your first day at school, in a new school, a beginner at something that sounds frustrating and uncomfortable. How is it a return and kind of but then you said it's kind of the core because it's an openness to all things. What's the balance between it being, at the core of who we are, the reality of who we are? Sometimes I describe humility as being just an honest portrayal of who we are. We take the good and we take the bad, and that's humility, is when we can say this, we're both. We're not always, we're not experts in anything. We're good and bad in things. But I like what you said about it being the core and the openness to all things. But it sounds uncomfortable. So how do you balance those two? If God calls us to live humbly before Him, is it just a lifestyle then of incredible discomfort?
So the discomfort comes from our wanting to control, right? Because it's an awkward situation we have no control of. And then we have to trust. So humility comes at a point where you trust beyond your understanding, right? And
that's good.
I think it's the meeting of that moment, of that trust, because a humble person, we've all known some, we all admire those people, right? I'm not saying I'm in that group, but I'd like to imagine that someday I'll get there. But humble people, when you see really humble people, they're people who can accomplish a lot or have accomplished something profound, and yet they aren't waving their own flag about it, right? They're just like doing their thing, and they trust that it will just happen. So, a really generic but amazing example would be like Mother Teresa. So here's somebody who is just doing what she believes God told her to do, and the results are amazing. And she's not like, it's awesome because I'm awesome. She's like, it's awesome because God's awesome, and I'm just doing what He told me. Sometimes it's really hard, and I'm sure she had days where she was less friendly to people than others because life wears on you.
Yeah.
But she had to be humble in order for that to succeed. It's when we step out of the way of stuff, when we step out of God's way.
And so humility. So it's not like, it's not, and I think sometimes humility can be vague because humility is not saying that you can't be successful or you can't attain to things. Because your example, Mother Teresa, it just means that you're not at the center of those things. Is that the difference?
You're being used to make those things happen, but it's not because you yourself are a genius and are so great at making these things happen. You've been given a skill of some kind, and that skill is being used. You're like a tool in tool chest, right? So your skill set is being employed to allow this greater thing to happen. That's a version of humility, right?
which is interesting because there's a quote, I didn't look it up, I just from memory, where Mother Teresa talks about herself as just being a pencil in the hand of the Lord.
Yeah,
That's
perfect. Yeah,
that God just uses her to write, things, or to in her case to serve the poor in India. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense, that it's that you have a skill, but it's not you, it's you're being utilized.
yeah. You've been gifted. Everyone has been gifted something, and how you choose to let that grow. Um, Either we work hard and grind hard and slave away at accomplishing something, or maybe getting a lot of degrees. And there's nothing wrong with having a lot of degrees. I think it's kind of cool that people can do that. But saying, for example, somebody who's naturally gifted at something, if they, and that something could be organizing, that something could be cooking, that something could be who knows what, but letting God use it versus I'm going to turn this into these things should look like. That's humility, I think. And it's hard to step back and say it's not just me.
So kind of who's at the end of it, whether you're at the end of it or God's at the end of it, whatever that is, that skill or so on.
Now, in this context, right there, it was the elders are being told lead in humility, because that's their skills. Their skill set is leadership, but the church isn't growing because you're an awesome leader. The church is growing because the love of God is pouring out of the ministry, right? And people are attracted to it because the world is a dark and loveless place on its own. That's when growth happens. And it's never because I have this vision where we will be fantastic in 5 years or some craziness, right?
Because of my planning and my so-and-so. Yeah,
exactly, right? So where Peter is reminding everybody, and he is the perfect candidate to have learned that lesson, right? To be able to recite it. Trying to create the tabernacle on the Mount of, or during the beatification, or cutting the guy's ear off, or all these things. Why, Lord? Don't we need a thing? Yeah, but not from you, pal. later.
Well, and that's why like I love the personalization of Peter, because it's like, oh, you recognize that he's lived all this, that when he's writing, he's not writing from a theoretical place. He's like, oh no, I learned humility because he was the least humble disciple. Even if everyone else goes away, Lord, I'm not going away. I won't deny you. Oh yeah.
Funny you should bring that up.
Yeah, funny you should say that. Yeah, I think that's it. Just that, like, he was humbled, but it brought him back to the core, to the reality of who he was. And then
I don't know if he was the least humble of the disciples. He was the most eager of the disciples.
I guess Andrew and James are, can we send fire down on this village? I feel like that's a little bit ego in there too. Yeah.
Yeah. Who gets to sit on your right and your left?
That's true. Yeah. I guess they were all equally ego driven. Yeah.
We'll let Mom talk to Jesus and she'll settle it. That's also awesome.
Mom, can you tell Jesus that we deserve to sit over here?
Come on, it'd be so cool for eternity to sit here.
Like the original helicopter parent.
Oh, yay.
No, but back to humility. Watch my time here. Back to humility. I like what you said. It's this weird. I think our culture has translated humility into the feeling of humiliation, which I know that it's the same core root, but so it's something to be avoided. And
to have been brought low, right?
Right. And so because it's something to be avoided, what's the opposite of that is ego. And so we're kind of conditioned to chase after ego and building, gaining, structuring, at the cost of anything. It doesn't matter what the cost is, cost of people, cost of time. And so to talk about humility, there's often this kind of like resistance you have to push through. But to what you said, and I think this is really helpful, is that humility is really the core of who we are. This is the ability to be open to what God is calling us to do, the ability to achieve, but without having to be the end all be all of that achievement. That which really means that when you achieve something, it's not only for the Lord, but it's also for other people. You're not achieving just so that people can look at you. You're achieving in whatever form, or you're administering your skill set in whatever form so that other people can benefit from it. And that only happens through humility, not through ego, because ego, then it would be like, well, look at what I'm doing, not let me help you with what you're doing.
Exactly. And it's hard. Like you said, we've been conditioned for so long to pursue that which looks good, I think, versus that which is doing good. And so to have the image knocked down is painful. And when you can let go of an image, which is not easy to do because we all have one. No one wants their hair messed up in pictures, right? So, start as small as that. When you can let go of an image of what it must be to be awesome, and just get back to just being humble. I'm here to do whatever I can. That kind of a thing. That feeling. That's, I think, a tough place to get to, but a powerful place to stand up from. And a lot of people who have been broken, people who have an addiction, for example, who they've had to give up, and they realize that they've faced that moment where whatever they were addicted to, the lie of it all, that it consumed them, they have hit a point of humbleness, right? Through the humiliation of the realization of their mistake. And then from that humbleness, they can start over clean again, new again, and able to see the world differently, see the world as it is, rather than how they imagined it through whatever problem that was happening. And all of us are addicted to something.
Yeah.
Almost everybody. I don't know anyone who can't stop themselves from doing a thing, whatever that is. But
yeah, I agree.
We all have something that we focus on a lot. And it's tough to analyze your life that way, but it's important to take time every now and then.
I think that the price of it, this was worth the price of admission, just for your statement that you started to talk about, that humility is a hard place to get to, but a powerful place to stand up from. And then talking through even addiction, it's just painful to let that go, to be able to walk through the pain of removing addiction, but it's a powerful place to stand up from, because you see everything in a different light. So I think that's a really good discussion around humility, and why again there's resistance that you face in talking about humility. But then the reality is that's God calls us to live from a posture of humility, and that's powerful. And there's because it's not something that has to achieve, it's not something that has to look any certain way, but it's something that when it does, it doesn't matter, because it's for the Lord and it's for other people. That was really good. That's a good statement.
So there's so many examples in the Bible, just alone there. If you start historically, so many examples over and over and over and over of people who were headed one way, had the brakes put on, and their life spun around the other, and to be used for God, right? So Saul to Paul, Peter from Simon, and you can go back to the Old Testament. I mean, even look at David, right? Ruth. I mean, so many examples. There's so many people who Esther, right? You know, how did they get to where they are, and how did they get used by God for even just a moment, like Esther? Just amazing.
Yeah.
But you know, I've known people in my life, as you know from last episode, my father's a minister, so we had folks come through our church. One of whom I will never forget, because he was amazing, was a gentleman who had been a really heavy-duty alcoholic, abusive to his family, really hardcore guy, which led him to getting in trouble, gone to jail, and in jail, right? There's no more humbling place to be than in jail, right? You've hit the wall. So in jail, he comes to the Lord and radically changes, like 180, and was the most enthusiastic, the most full of joy, the most full of love, and the person who could speak directly to people who came in with any kind of phoniness, with honesty and love. And there's no shell you could put up in front of him that he couldn't crack with love. Like, even afterwards, he'd be like, "Hey, you know, what's going on with this thing? Still love you, brother." And you get the hug and everything. You know, he was amazing.
What was that? And do you think he got there because he had to go through, because he went through the difficult stuff?
Because had to meet up with his humble self. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that return was a long and painful road for him and for his family, but the reward was huge, and the impact was massive afterwards. His funeral was very well attended. Let me put it that way. There were a lot of people there. He touched a lot of lives after being, you know, a less than positive fellow.
Very diplomatic.
Yeah.
Well, I think for time's sake, again, we'll kind of conclude here. But I think, at least for me, you know, I always appreciate a discussion on humility, because for me it's such a big topic that no matter when I do, there's always more to pull from it. And honestly, this actually helped me contextualize the idea of humility more than I have in a while. So I really appreciate your thoughts on that. Just the idea of returning, and then the idea of it being a difficult road back, but then it's the most powerful place to stand from. And it continues to give back. So thanks. That was really helpful, at least for me, and you know, all two of our listeners. So it's
both our parents.
But either way, thanks for doing this again. I appreciate it. And we will, the next time we meet, we will be talking about a character or characters in Genesis.
Woohoo!
And thus the people said, woohoo.
Yeah. Yeah.